Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ashton Ford, Chairman of the company, CPEP.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Keith Eddy, and I'm the General Manager of the CPEP company.
Good morning, Chairman, and good morning to everyone present today. My name is Corinne Clark. I'm the Senior Financial Officer acting.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Gopal Singh, and I'm the Corporate Secretary at CPEP.
Good morning, Chair and esteemed members of the committee. I am Stara Ram-Logan, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Nilufer Susan Ali. I'm the Acting Accounting Executive to Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Morning, Chairman and all present. My name is Beverly Hayward, Acting Planning Officer to Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Alicia Austin, Senior Internal Auditor at the CPEP company.
Thank you all. May I now ask my members to introduce themselves?
Good morning. Wade Mark, member.
Morning, Fazil Karim, member.
Good morning, Garvin Simonet, member.
Morning, Lester Henry, Vice Chairman of the committee.
Good morning, Sharian Kuchlo-Coburn, member.
Good morning, Adrian Leons, member.
Good morning, General Ansel Antoine, member.
All. Well, as you know, the role of this committee is firstly to examine the issues which arose based on your written submissions to the committee's questions, and secondly, to aid CPEP in improving its performance and operations, resulting in a more efficient and effective organization. Now, this meeting is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement with the CPEP and via email to parl101@ttparliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter @ttparliament. Now, before we get on with the official proceedings, a couple housekeeping matters. So I'd be grateful if everyone could either turn off your cell phones or put them on silent. And as you were doing, before you speak, turn on the microphone, and after you speak, if you could turn it off. Time is limited, and there's a lot we would like to cover. So I would ask participants to keep questions and answers as brief and focused as possible so that we can maximize the number of persons who have a chance to contribute. So let's get started. Your mission is working for the nation by protecting, enhancing, and building our communities through environmental entrepreneurship. What exactly is that understood to mean?
Well, we have been operating as the environmental company in areas where we refer to them as environmental work areas. And we, as CPEP, we are community-driven. We aim to support viable initiatives at the community level and to promote disciplined and responsible behavior through all our activities. CPEP also encourages entrepreneurship by combining resources in order to seize any business opportunity that presents itself in the interest of our contractors and the community entrepreneurs. As a matter of fact, we are in the process of organizing workshop for contractors because, as you know, it's an incubator, so that when they leave, they will be in a better position to continue as a business operation. The company also aims to partner with other government and or private agencies in the furtherance of the objectives of business development and environmental enhancement. In fact, the company has already partnered with the Ministry of Works and Transport to perform maintenance services nationwide, and further intends to engage the Ministry of Agriculture in the near future. The CPEP company also partners with the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management as a second responder to provide cleanup operations during natural disasters as occurred last year. The Disaster and Emergency Response Team undertakes cleanup operations when communities and homes of victims are affected by floods, landslides, and other natural disasters. CPEP fosters environmental friendliness as well as efficiency by ensuring that our contractors operate according to global standards in caring for the environment. And finally, currently CPEP has engaged a total of 266 contractors, each of whom are held to a high standard of performance to ensure any expenditure of public funds can stand up to the scrutiny of our major stakeholders, the public of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, permit me, Mr. Chairman, just to indicate some challenges that we have. And that is, I know it will come, so I'm taking it in front. That is a failure to remove the debris. When we clean, sometimes it takes a long, inordinate delay in removing debris. We depend on the regional corporations, and they themselves have challenges because we get very good cooperation from the regional corporations. The Ministry of Works, well, you know, they are responsible for the highways and the bus route. We are already doing what is normally would have been under the highways division. We are on the highways and on the bus route. And you know, this comes against the background of our workers who work under the contractors. You know, their salaries, minimum wage, $93 a day, as compared to the daily rated workers. They get over $240. Yet still they stand and watch us do the work. It's a very serious matter, and we have brought it to the attention of the authorities. We have done an outreach program where we visited in our regions all the contractors, and we encourage them to do the work. We discuss the problems and so on. We deal with the field officers and so on. And I think you will do a better report, a more factual report, if the members of the committee drive around Trinidad and go to areas like Grand Riche, Moruga, and Lupino, and Toko, and you would see the work we are doing outside of the urban areas. It is very important because our motto is clean TT, keeping the country clean every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Does anyone else have any opening remarks? A couple of questions about your mission. Can you clarify or expand on the words environmental entrepreneurship?
Through you, Chairman, in answer to your question, the CPEP mandate is really to deal with, it's an incubator dealing with people who are not involved in business. So what we're really trying to do is take the persons who are not involved in business, and when they leave the program, they should be trained to be able to continue their own businesses. So over a 3-year period, we would provide training. We would help them look at the newspapers, look for jobs that they could do, help them expand, help them to be able to deal with the employees that they have, because a lot of them, it's new to them. So they get a lot of training from the company so that at the end of the day, when they leave the program, they are well prepared to take on the world of business on their own.
And in your mission, you say working for the nation by protecting our communities. How are you protecting our communities?
Again, because CPEP is a company that literally touches every community in Trinidad and Tobago, we not only bring contractors on and just have them doing the cleaning of the drains and the thing. We actually work with them in communities in other areas to be able to bring the community along, to get people proud of the fact that when you have a clean community, it makes a difference. We want the members of the community to be an active participant. So hence the reason why a lot of the workers would come out of the very same communities that the contractors are working in. And that helps enhance the whole atmosphere of the community and bring them along to understand that clean environment is really next to, cleanliness is next to godliness. So it's important that the community gets involved. We have an 800 number that people can call if they see things that are not being done. We take a number of requests from schools and religious organizations just to ensure that we are making sure that the communities benefit from the contractors that we have. Well, as the chairman mentioned, in terms of support, we do get quite a bit of support now from the corporations, as well as the Ministry of Works and Transport. Another support area would be, even though it has not been totally formalized, with the Ministry of Agriculture, we have started working on the cocoa initiative. And as a matter of fact, some of the contractors that were leaving the program last year, we trained their workers to be able to work in the cocoa industry. So they actually moved from the CPEP into another industry. And they were just workers that would have moved. The contractors themselves were, as I said, they would have been given training so that they can then move on to look for contracts and do other things. In terms of opposition, I don't think there's a lot of opposition to the mission, because I think what we try to do is get the word out there that, to ensure that we keep our country clean and that we must protect the environment for the future of our children. So I don't think there's too much opposition, other than the fact that we throw plastic bottles all over the place. We do that. We tend to try to make sure that our message gets over to the communities while we're working in the communities, as well as on the highways and byways and the bus route.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask the chairman, Mr. Ford, and you, Mr. Eddy, in whichever order, to assist me in understanding a couple of issues arising from the documentation that you have provided to this committee. Starting at the point of your mission, there is reference made to the environmental policy. Could you indicate where that document, where does it exist? How did it arise?
CPEP was, I think, initially started with a cabinet note in 2002, and I think the company's name was changed in 2006. So the policy document was something that, I have been in CPEP now since 2016. Most of my colleagues here have not been there that long, so I'm actually the one who's been there the longest. The policy document is a document that we met when we went into the organization, which guides what we do. It was brought before the committees so that we can look at it to see whether it needed updating. And any updates that take this then goes before the board for approval. So there is an existing policy document that we have. It's lodged before, and we can present it to the committee if they so desire.
So Mr. Eddy, that environmental policy document referred to on page 19 of your report is a document that emanated from Cabinet, if I could put it to you, which guides or sets out the objectives and structure and purpose of CPEP. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we note that on said page 19, confirmation of what you shared with us earlier, Mr. Eddy, that CPEP functions as an incubator of small businesses and environmental companies. Again, it seems that there is an objective in the environmental policy which addresses specifically the empowerment of stakeholders, including communities, to care for their own environment by providing opportunities to share in the managing of their local resources. So that I'm a little bit perplexed by Schedule E of your report, which is produced in answer to a question on major capital expenditure. I believe at paragraph 39 of your report. Do you have it, Mr. Eddy?
I'm reading the document to see if I can find it now.
So on page 14, paragraph 39.
Yes.
And in relation to that submission, Annexure E was produced. Could you turn that up, please?
Go ahead, yeah.
Mr. Eddy, and also to the chairman, please jump in at any time. I am perplexed by this schedule. It is a schedule entitled Awards for Construction of Box Drains, Road Pavings, Driveways, Drainage Works, Road Works, 2012 to 2015. And if one looks at the contract sums in respect of the various companies and scope of works, the contracts range from 121,900 to as high as, I believe in some cases, $5 million. Again, when one looks at that schedule, which lists the companies, we see major companies or some major construction companies. How is this explained in the light of the environmental policy?
Again, remember, this predates my time. The company, apparently through a cabinet note, had changed or added to the mandate to do both project management and construction projects. And I believe that is exactly where this came about. There was projects that were done with building box drains. There were projects that were done, there was a community center that was built, and there were other projects that involved what we call the health sector initiative, which was repairs to some of the health facilities. So it would appear from the records that we have found that there was a change or an addition to the mandate to actually getting to project management and construction projects. In 2016, when I did come into the company, we actually reverted to the original mandate, which speaks to the environmental policy and the objective there, which is what you referred to earlier on.
You speak of a cabinet note, Mr. Eddy. Have you had sight of that cabinet note?
I have.
You have?
I have, but I have not seen any board resolutions or approvals or reports that actually speaks to the change that would have taken place. But I did see the cabinet note.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, could we ask for production of that note, if it is permitted? If Mr. Eddy has seen it, I think certainly this committee ought to have sight of it. Mr. Eddy and Mr. Ford, is it now that under your stewardship, this former practice of amending the scope of works and the projects has been discontinued?
Yes, as a matter of fact, since I only assumed that last year, May, and at no time we got any instructions from the cabinet or the line ministry to go along those lines. We have reverted to the original mandate, and that is the environment. And all these, what we are dealing with now, these matters are before the courts. The contractors took legal action, and it is before the courts. And this is what we are dealing with, is a legacy matter. We are just now in office, and we have to deal with it.
Mr. Ford, thank you. That leads me to a related question I have concerning the company's debt. And I think Mr. Eddy helped with one aspect of it. So the health sector initiative, where you're carrying a debt of $146,844,427 million, was something that you inherited, correct?
That's
because
correct.
Mr. Eddy indicated that health sector program has since been discontinued.
That's correct.
And could you explain on the entry on page 13 in terms of the summary of debt, the sum ascribed to legal fees of $2.6,070,639?
The company currently has about 14 High Court matters that we are dealing with, and the majority of the legal fees that you're seeing here as outstanding debt relates to the health sector initiative, because we have several matters that are currently before the courts. What would have happened in the, I think it was last year, is that we, as a company, as I said, it's a debt that we inherited and we met, and there was no way for us to verify the work that was being done under the health sector initiative, just from the paperwork that we would have found in the company. And I can't say too much about it, as I said before, because it's before the court, but we subsequently went out. We had some contractors that actually sued us, and there was a levy on the company at one point in time, which we had to go back to court to reverse. So what we did as a company is that we went ahead and got a quantity surveyor. Because we are spending public funds, we wanted to ensure that we were paying for work done. We got the quantity surveyor on board, and we are now in the courts with the quantity surveyor addressing the matters in terms of actual costs related to the work that was done. And I guess it's as much as I can say at this point, but legal fees is really, most of it is associated with that CPEP having to defend our position and make sure that we are spending the money for work that has been completed.
Mr. Eddy, I'm a little bit perplexed. What you're sharing with us, if I'm to understand it, amongst, and I'm putting it to you, the company, prior admittedly to your stewardship, departed from its original policy objectives and purpose, admittedly by, as you say, we have not seen it, a cabinet note, engaged in major contracts and significant sums, and now basically the debt, majority debt, or one has to say, of the company relates to the health sector initiative, and you have indicated other litigation from contractors referable to this departure from the policy. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Could I ask one final question, Mr. Chairman? And this goes to page number 21 and paragraph 63 of your report. And you confirm that you do not have an incineration facility.
That is also correct.
How long, did you ever have an incineration facility? Was there an existing incineration facility for CPEP?
No, as far as I know, CPEP itself didn't have an incineration facility. We did approach the Mount Hope Hospital because when those animals are picked up, we needed a way to be able to discard them. And I believe at one point during my tenure, we were able to utilize it for a short period. But certainly it is something that we are looking at because this is one area that we are having, because when those animals are picked up, the carcasses of those animals are picked up, it then poses a problem for us to dispose of. And an easy way would be if we had an incinerator to be able to do so. So it is something that the company is looking at.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eddy, and Mr. Chairman, that's it.
Thank you. Member Karim?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Eddy, I'd just like to continue from where the last questions were raised. Without compromising the matter of being sub judice. But is it not correct to say, or maybe you could enlighten us, the works that were done under the health sector initiative, were they certified for payment?
Member, I'm not sure when you say certified. What?
Was there any stamp on any document that you would have seen that verified that work was done and therefore, in a sense, approved for payment?
There were, and again, I have to be careful what I say here because I have to be in the courts this week. The documentation that we found, there was one contract that was signed. All the other contracts, there were no signature in it. There were letters of award that were signed. And that is in terms of documentation. And some of the signatories who, it's difficult for me to say the persons who signed actually were representing the company. So it is something that we are still looking at. I'm working with the lawyers to try and fully understand the whole matter and where it goes. But that is the paperwork that I have seen since coming into the company.
So why was it necessary to have a quantity surveyor now?
Because, as I said before, none of the persons here, including myself, would have been here when those matters took place. And to ensure, based on the paperwork that we met, and for us to be sure that we were actually paying for work that had been done, we wanted to be careful in the way that we were spending public funds so that we choose to be able to go out to the quantity surveyor to be able to verify the works.
And you were doing so on the basis that none of the documents that were submitted for payment had any stamp on any of them indicating certified correct.
Not that I can recall seeing.
or certified completed?
There were some completion certificates, yes. There were completion certificates.
So if there were completion certificates, which you inherited, which would have been authenticated, why was there a need for you to go to court?
Again, there were issues with the certification documents and the signatories. And I mean, again, I would like to say that I don't want to say too much more on that matter.
Okay, with respect to the debt structure, apart from that particular initiative, do you have any outstanding payments to any contractors for anything? And
Yes,
so could you tell us the amount and how many of those contractors?
There was something to call the BCCP, which involved collection of plastic bottles. There was a contract let for about $2.5 million, of which about $2.2 million was paid. That also is an outstanding debt, which we are now in the process. We just got board approval to be able to go forward with that.
Was that certified for payment?
Well, again, the contract was let, payments were made. The funds for that project came from the Environmental Management Authority through the Green Fund. So what we had to do was figure out, because CPEP couldn't use subvention funds to be able to pay those bills. So we had to figure out whether or not, whether those funds actually came into CPEP accounts and what they were for. We just got through the investigation, and we did find that there was monies coming in from the Green Fund through the EMA for that specific project. And it's on that basis that we took it to the board, and that's on the basis of which we have now have the authority to pay.
So apart from those two categories, the Health Initiative and the Green Initiative, do you have any other outstanding monies for contractors? Or do you, let me put it another way.
Yes, there is outstanding monies for contractors.
Could you tell us how many, how much?
It's roughly about $32 million. And let me explain what that is. Again, on my coming into the company, there were contractors who we consider to be what we call non-compliant, which means that their NIS and health surcharge payments were not being put to the relevant authorities. They were being, I'm not sure what they were being doing. They were being used, which means that in the company, we had no records of they paying those numbers. So based on their contracts, we were able to stop their management fees. And in stopping the management fees, it actually accumulated to the number that I just mentioned, roughly 32. And
is CPEP compliant with your payments?
CPEP is compliant with our payments.
Did you, during your tenure, or the last 3 years, did you at any time owe the VAT any sums of money? So you just indicated that you were fully compliant?
We were compliant, but another legacy issue, if you look on the sheet, there's $7.9 million in VAT payments. Again, that predates my time.
What is the status of it now?
We have written, again, because we are not using subvention funds to clear this off, we have written to the relevant ministry, to our line ministry, to be able to obtain those funds so that we can pay.
Okay. With respect to a follow-up question, it is reported that you have had experiences of breaches in risk management, fraud, and the whistleblower policy. Might you be able to give us some information in terms of those breaches, what it involves?
Remember, I was actually looking at the document, reading it through again, and that was an error. There is no breaches of any the fraud policy or any of those risk management issues.
Is that a serious error?
It's a serious error.
It comes before a parliamentary committee like this, and I am quoted from page 25 of his submission, dated the 27th of
I am aware, and as I said, it's an error. I can't tell you of any breaches.
Let me hope that this next question is not an error. Since you would have spoken about the fact that, and I'm just taking from your introductory remarks about being entrepreneurial and the contractors, and of course we'd like to ask you if you could, unless it is here, or if you could submit to us, how many contractors do you have? And if you can tell us in a sense of summary, by regions.
We have.
Is it by regions?
It's by, well, I can give you a total figure now. If you want, we can supply it by
How much do you
regions.
have now?
But we have a total of 266 contractors presently.
Now, you had indicated as well earlier on that one of the policies or the expectation is that a lot of these persons who are CPEP employees would have moved on to entrepreneurial activities. I want to ask you so that there is no cause of any error. What has your tracer study shown with respect to those who have completed and graduated, in a sense, into their own entrepreneurial activities? What does the tracer study, and when was the tracer study done?
I'm not aware of a tracer study, and my speaking on that issue really was for the new contractors because, again, there was very little time between my tenure coming into the company and the contractors that would have been there for a period of 5, 7 years. So I am not sure what would have taken place before in terms of bringing those contractors, because it was more than 3 years, so I'm not sure what would have been done in the 5 to 7 year period to get those contractors in a position. I know that for a few specific contractors, when they were leaving the program, we engaged the cocoa company to be able to put some of those people to employment because the contractors were leaving the program.
Yes, there'll be a couple more. I just want to ask one final question because I'll come back to ask some other questions on the finances and so on.
Sure.
But you have a large cohort. How many persons you have?
A large, sorry?
You have a large workforce.
Currently, we have about 91 persons.
No, I mean in total employees.
In total, it's about 8,000 workers. You're talking about the contractors?
Yeah.
About 8,000.
8,000 workers. Now, you said that you would have done some training at the CPEP company for these persons. Mm-hmm. Have you thought it fit, appropriate, and necessary to partner with any of the established training institutions funded by the government of Trinidad and Tobago to assist you? And if you have, what city, how many persons have been trained, if you can tell us a ballpark figure, in what areas of certification have they acquired?
We actually have engaged the government agencies. We are working towards a workshop now, so I can't tell you that there are any, other than the COCO initiative that we've had, I can't tell you that there are other workers who would have left the program that would have been trained in any specific skill.
So you have not engaged any of the training providers?
We have.
Could you give us an example?
We've met with the Downtown Owners Association. We've met with, remember, I can't recall all of the
Let me give you an example of where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of people who use the wheel whackers.
Yeah.
As small engine repairs.
Sure.
You have people who do landscaping.
Yeah.
We have occupational and competency standards for those. And the question I'm asking, if it is not here as an error, and maybe you should consider it then, I'm suggesting that you engage in a partnership with the state providers so that you'll be able to get training and certification for this person.
Just don't share.
I think the chairman wanted to...
But what I'm saying to you is that we have done so. I can provide that information in writing with the number of agencies that we have actually engaged. But the program has not kicked off yet because we are also planning to have a workshop where we bring all those people in one area to be able to train and to be able to interview workers as we see fit. So it is something that we have engaged in. It just has not totally kicked off the ground yet, and that can be provided in writing with the agencies that we have actually engaged. Sorry, Chairman.
I just want to add, the board has already approved, in principle, the program, the workshops for the contractors. And we also want to engage the foremen on the job site to train in terms of relationship between the workers and the foremen and the communities.
I was just asking that in the context that it must not be a misnomer of a policy and a statement here, but in fact a factual representation of the desired outcomes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Henry.
I just want to follow up, sorry, on something that Member Karim asked. What the contractors, how are they contracted? What's your contract with the contractors? And how are they retained? What is the basis for retention? And how long is the average contractor part of the program?
Remember, again, because we've gone back to the original mandate, it's a 3-year incubator program. In terms of how they're retained, and RFPs put out in the newspapers. We then get applications in, we go through an evaluation process, and contractors are given contracts. When you do have a contract, we have instituted evaluation procedure that we evaluate the contractors on a quarterly basis to ensure that they are meeting the standards set for the CPEP company.
Thank you. Member Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning again to everyone. Mr. Chairman, you would agree with me, Mr. Chairman of CPEP, through our chairman, that accountability represents the heartbeat of any modern democracy when it comes to good governance and getting not only value for our monies, but ensuring that monies that are approved by the Parliament is properly accounted for by every state institution, state body, or entity. You would agree with me, Mr. Chairman? I would like you to join me on page 3 of your submission. Item 10. It is stated in item 10 that the external auditor of CPEP, Hardees and Associates, chartered accountant, left or tendered their resignation effective immediately, and that is, according to this information, 1st of November 2018. First of all, can you share with this committee why did the external auditor resign?
I will just give you an overview, and the general manager will go into details. I assumed office in May, as I told you, and there was a problem with the accounts for the year 2015. It involved working with the external auditor, and apparently there was a little misunderstanding or working relationship between the external auditor and our auditors and internal auditor at the company. He requested to meet with me as chairman. I did not respond, and I indicated I will not meet with him because of the directive from the Ministry of Finance, which indicated that the chairman of the company shall not be involved in any matters dealing with the audit. And what the other audit? There's 2 committees of the company I can't deal with at all as chairman. That is directive from the Ministry of Finance, and this is the performance manual. He insisted, he disagreed, he sent a letter saying he disagreed with that. And he insisted on meeting with the chairman, that is me. And I never bothered with him. I never responded. And he kept correspondence between the CorpSec, and the CorpSec keep reminding him of the directive from the Ministry of Finance and the performance manual and so on. He continued to disagree. And maybe he realized that it's going nowhere. He did not supply the information required. He made some accusations. We responded to it. And then he submitted his resignation. And then we had to go to the Ministry of Finance to call an AGM to appoint a new external auditor. And that is where we are at now. I don't know if the general manager or the Corpsec could explain the situation as it is now.
Well, before we deal with the situation as it is now, can you be kind enough to provide this committee with a copy of the letter of resignation of Hardy's and Associates, Chartered Accountants?
Yes, we can.
Yes, definitely.
Now, how long was this external auditor being employed with CPEP?
Uh, 2012, I believe, until the resignation.
Was there any indication between 2012 and before his resignation of any dissatisfaction or discomfort with the company, its management, and the external auditor's relationship with the internal auditor?
I did not meet, there was not an internal auditor in the company, as far as I can tell, during those years. I don't know whether there was any disagreements. But let me just seek to explain a bit further. The 2015 audit, which we met when we came in, we were asked to sign off on management letters, and one of the problems we had is, as you recall, there was a server crash that CPEP experienced, in which a lot of the financial information was either corrupted or lost. We couldn't recover. We spent several months with different companies trying to recover the data. So there was no way for the incoming management or the board of directors to be able to verify any of that information. And I think we made that clear to the auditor, that we, and as Chairman mentioned, that there were certain things that we requested that we did not get. And there was a bit of back and forth between the auditor and ourselves, and eventually the resignation was tendered. So that is really where I guess the crux of the matter came about, is that there was no way for us to verify information. We have subsequently been able to recover that information, but we now have, again, to go ahead and literally rebuild it into the system that we have.
When you say you have now recovered the information, what do you
From
mean?
the server crash. So when the server crashed, the information was lost completely. So we went to several vendors, including the vendor that was looking after the server at the time. They were unable to recover. We went to, I believe, PwC also. We couldn't get it recovered there, and eventually we found a vendor a few months ago who was actually able to recover most of the data. So we now have to put that data back, manually put it back into the system so that we could then verify the financial information.
You want to share?
Mr. Senator, I also want to add, the external auditor contract expired around 2016 or 2015 and had to be renewed. I would like you and members of the committee and Mr. Chairman to get a copy of that contract and to see how it was renewed. Very important. So we will be supplying you with that information as well. And you would see to the extent the problem we had with that external auditor.
May I also indicate or ask through the chairman here, based on what I'm reading in item 11 on page 3, the server crashed in and around March 2016. So this was when the new management arrived on the compound. So it didn't occur when the last administration was there.
No, this was before the new management arrived on the compound. The new management came in July 2016.
July 2016?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you share with us what was the reason advanced for the failure of the server?
Remember, we can provide, there's an extensive report that was done by the IT officer, and that can be provided in writing to the committee.
Okay. You said that the company recruited a provider and in order to help you rebuild, because you cannot manufacture data. If it is lost, it is lost. So when you say that you get a provider to rebuild the database, and you now have the data that was lost between 2012 2015, could you explain to this committee what is meant by rebuilding data in that context? And could you also provide us with the name of this provider that you recruited to help you rebuild this data that was lost?
In terms of rebuilding the data, what we were referring to here is because all of the computer-generated information was not available to us, it means that we had to then go back to paper. We had to go back to the banking institutions to get information, which they would have to go into their archives to provide for us. And at the time, remember, we weren't able to recover any data at all from the computer system. So we then went out and got a service provider who would have probably taken about a year to be able to rebuild all that information back into a computer system. And subsequent to that, we kept trying to recover the data that we would have lost. And it's at that point, somewhere along the line when we were doing this, that we were able to recover the electronic data. So it then shortened the scope because there is about 3 months of that data between 2012 and 2015 that we still have to manually input. So in terms of the service provider, that didn't actually continue because we did recover we were able to recover the electronic data on the computer system. But we are now going to have to go back out to a service provider to be able to put that together again for us, but with a shortened scope.
So you're confusing this committee. You talk about you said CPEP earlier had to engage a provider to rebuild, and you went on further to elaborate and to clarify that this provider through you and the provider had to go back to institutions like banks and to get information. And then mysteriously, you said you got the electronic system working again. So I am not too clear in my mind, and I'm not too sure if the members are clear what is happening here. Because you're saying on the one hand, you lost all the data. Then you went to get data retrieved from institutions. And then in between that, electronically, you were able to start getting back or retrieving the information. I have asked on behalf of the committee, could you give us the name of the provider that helped rebuild the data or retrieve the data? This is what you have in your item 11. The company has selected a provider to perform data entry services. Who is this data provider that you selected? The name of that person, how long the person was employed, what was the payment made to that person, and is that person still employed with the company? These are some of the areas I'd like to clarify, Mr. Chairman.
Let me seek to clarify your information. As I indicated, there was a server crash, that the data was lost. All the electronic data was completely lost when I came into the company. So there were several things that were happening. We were attempting to recover that lost data, that lost electronic data. There was attempts made to recover that loss. And I indicated earlier that we went to different service providers to be able to do so. So if we didn't have success with one, we moved on to another one because it was critical for us to be able to get back that financial data.
Well, could you pause and tell this committee the names of those service providers that you went
I
to?
did mention one, which was PwC. The other one was Davin, and there was one other.
What was the name of that one?
Davin.
You want to spell that for us?
Davyn.
Okay. Yes. And how long? And the next one is where? Is what?
PwC.
No, you said two on another one.
I can't recall the other one now, but I can get that for you in writing also.
And could you, as you are getting it in writing, could you provide us as a committee with the period that these service providers were engaged and the costs to CPEP? So at least we'll have an appreciation of what was involved here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When would, given the fact that you seem to be sailing smoothly from what you have indicated to this committee, insofar as the retrieval of data, and the last period we have, based on your record, and based on what we have before us as a parliament, 2014 was the last published accounts of CPEP. Could you tell this committee, given the fact that you have now been able to retrieve all the information, all the data that were lost, could you tell us when would you be able to submit to your line minister and through him to this parliament, publish final audited accounts for 15, 16, 17, and 18. Can you share with this committee when those reports are going to be submitted?
Remember, it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to say here now what that timeline will be, because currently what needs to happen is once that data has been rebuilt and verified, we are in the process of, we have to have an AGM to be able to appoint a new auditor. So there are a number of steps that have to take place. And once those steps take place, the data is verified, a new auditor is appointed. We will then seek to move forward on 2015, 16, 17, and 18.
Could you tell this committee when you anticipate the data that has been properly retrieved would be verified?
Approximately 6 months from now.
From now, 6 months. So you have proper data before you, but it will take you 6 months to verify those data, the data rather. And could you tell us, when are you going to call your AGM? It is obviously going to be after the data is verified.
Ministry of Finance, what section it is? The investment section, whatever section in the Ministry of Finance, they are responsible for someone in the AGM.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to indicate, I open by saying that accountability is the heartbeat of any modern civilized democracy. And I'm also saying that you would agree with me, Mr. Chairman, of CPEP, that 2015, 2016, 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018, CPEP, Mr. Chairman, has spent over $1.5 billion. And we do not have, Mr. Chairman, before this parliament, any accounts whatsoever. So what I was going to finally ask before I come to another round, Mr. Chairman, is how is CPEP going about the public business spending over $1.5 billion? And we have no way of a parliament, as a parliament, of knowing how this money has been spent? And as you're on that, could you share with this committee briefly, do you have a strategic plan along with this absence of accountability? So we'll know how this CPEP is functioning and performing, and whether we need to take this matter a step further.
Senator Mark, I agree with you that we have to account. But this is very brief. We would not have been in this debacle if our predecessors were doing the job. Simple as that. If they were doing their job, we would not have been in this position today.
Mr. Chairman, may I say finally, I take my job very seriously, Mr. Ford. Mr. Chairman, I would want to ask you, as chairman of this committee, because of the seriousness of this matter, to consider informing and engaging the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago to conduct an independent forensic report into this organization called CPEP and its failure to provide accounts to this Parliament for the period 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. If there is criminal activities involved in this, let the independent auditor find out who is involved, what is involved. But I would like to propose to the chairman that we ask an independent institution, the Auditor General, to get into CPEP and do an independent forensic special audit on this CPEP. That is what I would like to say.
Thank you, Member Mark. And certainly, I'm sure that
Mr.
is
Chairman,
something.
I just want to respond by saying I welcome that. And we will see who are the culprits.
Yes.
On behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. As simple as that.
Yes.
Mr. Mark was there, he knows. Mr. Khan was there.
So,
Mr. Karim, I mean.
That is certainly something
They
that,
will be able to answer that, not me.
yeah, that is certainly something that the committee will consider in working out its recommendations. But I think all of us here share the consternation and the concerns expressed by Member Mark, because we're talking about large sums of money. We're talking about a mysterious server crash with valuable data just disappearing. We're talking about unexplained sudden departure of an external auditor. These are worrying things. And you would recall that you are a company operating under the Companies Act. So as a company, you are subject to the disclosure, the accounting, and the auditing requirements imposed on companies under the Companies Act. You're also a state enterprise. And so you're required to comply with the operational framework set out in the State Enterprises Performance Manual. So I think we would all agree that a properly functioning audit committee is indispensable. The board is responsible for control systems and accounting procedures being put in place. And so I know a lot of this preceded you, but my question is, what is done now to monitor and review risk control so you don't have a server crash, you don't have auditors walking off on you? What is in place for monitoring the integrity of the company's financial statements?
We have put in place several protections to ensure that even if a server does crash, information is not lost. So through the IT system, we have information being held in the cloud. We back up information on a daily basis in the company. So there are several protective systems that have been put in place to ensure that we do not end up in the same position that we met.
I know we have some questions. First, Brigadier.
Good morning again. In your response, CPEP said that they were returning to their original mandate, which was to create small contractors who would stay in the program for 3 years and then graduate into their own private business. I know for a fact that in sometime around August 2015, quite a number of contracts were given to contractors on a 3-year basis. We are now in 2019. Could you indicate to me if any and if how many of these contractors are still employed by CPEP?
You are quite right. In 2015, although those contractors would have been in the program, some of them 3 years, some 4, some 5, there were contracts given out in 2015 for a further 3 years. So in 2018, those contracts came to an end, at which time those contractors moved on, and we now have new contractors in the system.
So those contractors from 2015 are no longer
in the system.
So therefore, in 2019, we only have new contractors.
Yes.
Mr. Leons.
Yes, good morning. Just to follow up on my colleague's question, the contractors you're engaging now, you said that you have engaged different agencies to ensure that they have proper training. Now, because it's something new, are you sure that within the 3-year program that you would be able to effectively give the proper training to these contractors, or would there be a need to extend it to ensure that we don't end up in the same issue from before, where contractors would leave the program without having the full benefit of the mandate that CPEP was created for?
There may never be enough time to really get to the point that we want to get with the contractors in terms of training, but we are going to schedule the programs in such a way that at least they get the sort of foundation that they would then be able to go out after the 3-year period, full 3-year period. If we are to go any longer, and there may be instances that everybody won't have the same level that they will be at the leaving, it then means that we'll have to go against the mandate. So we want to be able to, within the 3-year time frame, to be able to put those contractors in a position that they can then go out on their own. And we think we can achieve that.
Oh, okay, thank you. And just, Member Karim would have indicated some suggestions. But I know specifically there are a number of employees under the contractors that have basic deficiencies like reading, numeracy, and literacy. What are we doing to capture this information? And is there a plan for that basic level training for the persons employed under the contractors?
Remember, I'll have to look at the training program. A lot of it would have been geared to the contractor themselves, teaching them how to actually run a business, to go out and look for other work. So I'm not sure if that aspect of it has been captured, but certainly if it has not been, it's something that we would look at capturing and probably run some programs, some literacy programs for the workers of the contractors.
And just lastly, quickly, so I could get another one of my colleagues to ask questions. First of all, I'd like to commend you on making sure the money that you spent is spent for work done and ensuring value for money, for making sure that our hard taxpayers' money is utilized correctly, right? Because the same thing that Member Mark would have raised in terms of a lot of money being spent and not being able to determine where this money was spent. If you just go willy-nilly spending money, you'll have to be seriously accountable for it. I'd like to also commend the work that CPEP has been doing in terms of cleaning and making sure the country is clean, which they have been doing for quite some time. What I am concerned on is the fact that some of the areas that CPEP is engaged in appears to be areas where other agencies or ministries would have had to be doing. Is it that those ministries are reducing their, or agencies reducing their mandate in terms of maintenance, for example, the highways and stuff? Or is it some form of transition where the excellent model that CPEP is having is transferred to the ministries? What is being done there?
Thank you, and thank you very much for your kind comments, because I know our work is visible. We are on the highways, as you say, and the bus route. It is a government policy for CPEP to work along with the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Agriculture. I cannot speak for the other agencies where, like the Highways Division, where normally they would have been seen looking after the highways, and the regional corporations would have been looking after the secondary roads and so on in maintenance. I can't speak to them, but what I know is we are working along with those agencies, and we are doing the duties along the bus route, along the highways, and within the communities. As I said earlier on, our problem is the collection that is make our work look unfinished. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to humbly suggest, I lived in the Ministry of Works compound for some years when my father worked in the Ministry of Works, and I have never seen a minister or a director of highways issuing instructions for vehicles to go and do their work. It is done by the local supervisors. And I believe that is where the problem is, in terms of dispatching the vehicles to pick up the waste or the debris on the highways and on the bus route and so on. And I don't want them to come and say, to blame the minister or to blame the director of highways. You have supervisors within these compounds. Let's take the case of Arima, where I live. It is on O'Mara Road, and the highway is just not too far away. And if you drive along that area between Wallerfield and Curragh, you would see all CPEP work on the side of the road still. For whatever reason, the Ministry of Works will not be picking up this stuff, I don't know. We have 4 vehicles in CPEP. We try to do it, but we can't accomplish that throughout the country. As I said, we get good cooperation from the minister and the director. We get good cooperation from the regional corporations. But it's the implementation down the line that is causing the problem. And it gives the impression, that is why he asked that question, the member. It gives the impression that there's only CPEP working, because nobody sees the regional corporation or the Ministry of Works people. They only see CPEP. And we have to correct that at the level of the implementation at the different regions, at the distribution of vehicles to pick up the rubbish and so on.
Thank you. Member Critchlow-Coburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to go back to this document entitled Awards for Construction of Box Drains, Road Pavings, Driveways, Drainage Works, and Road Works. And I heard the General Manager indicating that this was done via cabinet minute. What I want to know is, one, was the subvention of CPEP increased to facilitate this? Because just doing a rough calculation of the figures in this document, it would seem that CPEP spent over $150 million on these projects. So, one, I want to know whether there was a corresponding increase in CPEP's subventions, and did these projects in any way contribute to CPEP's current debt situation?
The member, thanks for the question. I am not sure in terms of the information that we've seen, and again, because of the server crash, we're still now trying to gather that information as to whether this was done with subvention or whether it was done with a separate budget. So we're not there yet to be able to answer that question. In terms of this specific sheet, I think, if I'm not, most of this cost would have been paid for the box drains and the construction. The issue that we are having, though, is the ones that were not paid, which is the $147 million in the health sector initiative. So I believe these costs were already taken care of, but I'm not sure of what it came out of, if it actually came out of subvention, whether the subvention. So once we have the information recovered and verified, we'll be able to answer that question.
While we recognize that some of your records may not be available, I find it very interesting that having spent over $100 million, most of these works were done in Dibe, Pinal, and Barrackpore. Was there something special taking place in those areas that required all of this work to be done? Because, no, I looked at it and I cannot understand $100 and something odd million being spent primarily in those three areas. Yeah. So would your record suggest that something in particular was taking place in those areas?
I'm not sure what, but the question, it's noted that they were in a specific area. And again, I think once we're able to get back into the records, we should have a little more information. But nothing that we've seen says that there was anything special in particular going on in that area.
I also looked at the document here on page 24, and the question was posed as to what is being done to improve the financial viability of CPEP to increase its stability and profitability. And the focus really was on the human resources of the organization. Now, one of the statements made here was that management roles were also reclassified and responsibilities spread across roles and functions. Are you satisfied that you have the appropriate human resources to carry out the new mandate of CPEP?
We are, in terms of the regularization and what was done in terms of the reclassification of employees, from an org structure standpoint, I am satisfied. We have not yet staffed up the company with the required human resource to be able to move forward as we would like.
So the org structure suggests that you require 128 persons.
Yeah.
At some point, I think you indicated you now have 91 persons. So is it that difference may comprise your vacancies, or do you need to revisit and look at the persons you currently have?
The difference is the vacancies.
Okay. So in October of 2018, a new org structure was approved.
Yes.
Were there resultant redundancies with severance benefits? Was it necessary for you all to sever persons as a result of that change in your org structure? And if so, how many and at what cost?
Most of the persons that were exited from the company actually was a result of the change in the org structure, one, but also we had contracts that would have come to an end. Actually, when I came in 2016, there were several employees who were kept on month-to-month contracts, which is really not something that is good for anybody, not the company nor the employee, because you literally have, I mean, you're working without any benefits, anything at all. So it took us a while to regularize that, which is one of the things that was done. So a lot of what happened was mostly contract ends or month-to-month employees being exited from the company because of the change in the org structure.
One last question, Mr. Chairman. Is it that you only employ persons on contract? Do you have a permanent structure, or you only employ persons on contract?
Only on contract.
And how does that affect continuity of operations? Because if every 3 years you may have to recruit new persons, how does that impact the organization and the whole issue of continuity?
Again, very good question. It does impact it because we have a lot of turnover of staff, change in staff, and even my present position coming in, and all that would have happened years gone by, there were not people in the company who could actually answer or give you information. So a lot of it you have to depend on finding records, and we've had issues with some of the records that were kept. So there is an effect in terms of just having people on contracts and not permanent positions.
I know I said last, but this is the last one. So does CPEP have plans for example, I know you're supposed to be working on your strategic plan. Would you be looking at revising the whole org structure and the manner in which people are employed in terms of contract versus permanency or that type of thing?
It's well, we would be looking at it. The chairman is now reminding me that this is a policy of the government, so it may be a difficult thing to change.
Member Antoine.
Yes, I just want to return to the situation with the contractors. Again, in your response, you said you are returning to your original mandate. And in your original mandate, each contractor was given a number of teams in which to do his work. The contractors, for instance, those in 2015, had a certain number of teams, but these teams were reduced to the present contractors. Could you give us the rationale behind the reduction of the teams to the contractors?
Remember, you're correct. Previously, there were contractors who had what we call 6 teams, which was 60 workers, and 4 teams, 40 workers, and some had 3. A decision was made, and one of the main reasons was we had a reduction in subvention from those years. So we went from about 535 million to currently about $376 million. So the action was taken to reduce all of the teams to standardize it across the board to 30 workers. So each contractor would have 3 teams, unless there's some special circumstance that requires somebody to have more or less. And it was more of a budget restriction because we weren't getting as much subvention as before, that we had to find ways to be able to have the same or more contractors in the program to keep the country in a certain condition. So the decision was taken to reduce them to 30 for each contractor.
Now, I want to compliment CPEP, especially on their response October last year to the natural disaster that took place more in the eastern part of the country that affected areas like Greenvale and Ascot Gardens. And one of the reasons why the response or the assistance to the needy citizens took long was because a number of their contractors, because a lot of the contractors in Dabadi-Omira responded both to Greenvale and to areas within Dabadi-Omira. And part of the problem was the small number of people employed with the contractors. So in dealing with your strategic plan, I would like to know if you have intentions of revisiting the size of the teams and the size and the amount of personnel employed by the contractors in the near future.
Very good question, and the representative from our line ministry is here, and they are hearing your request, and I would hope that they will take it up with the Honorable Minister, and the policy will be handed down to us if for any change in the what we are doing now.
Policy in terms of the size of the teams is a directive from the Ministry of Rural Government and the Ministry of Finance.
And the Ministry of Finance, yes.
So appeal to the Ministry of Rural Development and on behalf of the contractors that if this could be revisited in the near future.
Thank you, Member. PS, would you like to comment on that?
I know a Ministry of Finance have dictated a few requirements for CPEP to fulfill with respect to the way forward, and as soon as they comply, they would relook the budget and the expectations. In fact, we have been requesting the strategic plan to enable both ministries to be able to monitor what their goals, objectives, and whether they are achieving their targets. But again, the manual is not legally binding, so we can write and expect that we would get compliance. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, Certain reports have been circulating in the public domain, and I think it would be remiss not to get your comments on them. So I'm looking at an article in the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian on Sunday, February 17th. It says, state funds gangs. And the report is, gang leaders get state contracts, multi-million-dollar HDC, URP, and CPEP projects. I'll just read a couple of highlights, and then I'll ask you. Atop, this is by Renuka Singh, lucrative deals for alleged gang leaders. A top-secret national security document which identified several of the men arrested during last week's anti-gang sweep shows the same men benefiting from lucrative government contracts. And then lower down she says, it has been a problem for the past 14 years where gangs fight to get their claws into state contracts, which is a catalyst for gang wars and increased homicide. Lower down she says, gangs obtained million-dollar contracts through the HDC, URP, and the Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program, CPEP, according to the report. Acquisition of government contracts by known gang members. Criminal gang leaders operating along the East-West corridor continue to use their influence to obtain lucrative contracts from, among others, CPEP, and that these contracts were also used as a method of ensuring community support through the provision of jobs to residents. Your comments, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. What I can see clearly is that I am not aware that when we are evaluating, the committee is evaluating tenders by contractors, that they are identified as gang leaders. I am not aware of that at all. I'm not aware that CPEP is engaging with contractors to do anything unlawful. I'm aware of that. We are not involved. Neither the general manager nor our supervisors are involved in any activity like that. If a contractor is awarded and somebody in his company is involved in activities, we are not responsible for that either. But I'm saying as a matter of policy, we don't give out contract based on any criminal activity whatsoever.
Mark?
May I direct this to the distinguished chairman of CPEP? In your submission earlier, you emphasized on the word discipline. Could you share with this committee whether, well, first of all, I should bring to your attention that there was a public, let's say, communication, or there was public information in which the citizenry were alerted to a high-profile entertainer using very colorful language in an exchange with a member of the public whilst publicly driving a CPEP registered vehicle. Could you inform this committee, Mr. Chairman, whether that entertainer or individual or employee is still on the job at CPEP, and whether an investigation was conducted into it? And could you indicate to this committee whether you can share the outcome of that investigation into that matter?
Thank you, Mr. Mark, Senator Mark. Yes, there was an incident. Yes, an investigation was carried out. Yes, the investigators submitted a report. And in that report, it gives the details of the person concerned responding to an ad, being interviewed, and getting the instruments of appointment. And yes, the incident took place. And while the investigator was conducting his work, the person involved, the other person, refused to cooperate with the investigator. He did not make a report to the police. He did not make a report to CPEP. And he refused to be interviewed by the investigator. In the circumstances, the investigator recommended that the employee be returned to this job with a stern warning, and we carried out the recommendation accordingly.
Could you make a copy of that report available to this committee?
Definitely.
All right. The second area, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to raise has to do with the following. Well, first of all, can I ask whether the chairman or the general manager is aware of an agreement between CPEP and the former managing director or general manager as it relates to a termination settlement that may have involved over $1 million. And if you are aware of this agreement, would you be kind enough to make a copy of that agreement available to this committee? Now, I want to warn you before you answer that you're under oath at this committee meeting.
I'm not aware that they're under oath, but we do expect full disclosure. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, member, this predates my time. I have seen a copy of an agreement, an unsigned copy. If the member wants, that could be made available to the committee.
Thank you very much. I would also like, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, sorry, just to interject. If it's an unsigned copy, why would the committee want to have to do it? Because then it has no validity. I'm just thinking.
That's a good point, but I think we would still want to see the document and deliberate internally on it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask, I think it was asked before, but you'll guide me. Did we ask, Mr. Chairman, for the list of the 266 contractors, a list, and where they are located?
Yes.
Okay, right. May I ask, Mr. Chairman, through you, to Mr. Eddy, on page 23, Mr. Eddy, of your submission? Of the chairman's submission, I beg your pardon. I observe that in terms of your revenue, profit and loss, operating costs, gross margin, net margin, I observe that in 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018, that your operating costs exceeded your revenue, and by 10 million, 10.6 million, and that's 2016, 2017, and in 2017, 2018, by just around 7 million. Could you explain to this committee where did you or how were you able to access the monies to fill that gap during the period in question?
Thank you, member. Yes, again, in 2016, 2015, 2016, there was 2016, 2017, there was a reduction in the subvention, but we still carry the same amount of contractors that was from the previous year. So the requirement to fulfill those monies to those contractors was less at the time. So when we got the subvention, we did not get enough to continue but those contractors had contracts that we had to honor. So it was kept going. And then there was another reduction in 2017, 2018. But 2017, 2018, in our mid-year review, we were given an additional sum of money, which allowed us to be able to come to fill all of those costs that you would have seen as outstanding.
Okay, so the government of Trinidad and Tobago, through an allocation in the mid-year review,
yes,
provided you with these sums.
The sums.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, the final question. This is to the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. I'll ask the question, ma'am, and you can respond after. Is the CPEP current with its submissions of administrative reports to your ministry? Firstly, has CPEP communicated any policy issues to the line ministry, which is your ministry? Has CPEP submitted investment proposals for line ministry's review? And the final question, Mr. Chairman, what assurances can this committee be given that CPEP is managing its affairs in a prudent and transparent manner? Those are my 4 questions, Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Chair. We have made requests for the administrative reports from CPEP. They have submitted the 2012, 2013, 13, 14 and 15, and 16. But unfortunately, the standard of the reports didn't meet our requirements, so we are working with them to bring it up to standard. And the 2017, 2018 is outstanding, and I expect that they would be working on that. With respect to communicating any policy issues to us, no, we have not been informed of any policy issues that they need guidance or direction on. If they have submitted any investment proposals, no, they haven't. And as a matter of fact, we have been working with the Ministry of Finance in terms of ensuring that they are in compliance with what their requirements should be for the investment division. Thank you.
And how often, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Member Mark.
All right, I have to pause. Thank you, Mr.
So before, we're coming towards the end, and before I invite closing submissions, I have 2 more questions, one from Member Karam and one from Member Critchlow Coburn. So, Member Karam?
Thanks, Chairman. I'll have to decide which is the most important one. But I have 1.5 is okay. If you're looking at this same, I'm just taking from where my colleague, Mr. Mark, made reference to page 23, where you had revenue and profit and loss. You indicated to this meeting, I know he said on the oath, but it's on the record, you indicated to this meeting on more than one occasion this morning about the server crashing, and you now have to enter information manually. Could you tell us how you arrive at these figures? You have figures here for 2015, 16, 17, 2015, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18. If you do not have information, if you are retrieving, on what basis are you telling the country that you have calculated revenue to this amount, profit and loss to this amount? Because as far as I know from my accounting experience, to get your profit and loss statement, you have to do some balancing. You have to get some documentation. Could you tell us what did you use to get this data? And is this data bona fide? Or is this provisional, or is it, what is it?
Through you, Chairman.
Okay.
This data, we have a new system, so we rest the old accounting system for it to be rebuilt, and we created a new system where we will be able to put in the 2016, 17, 17, 18 information, which is current. The information that was lost was up till 2015, up till March, 2016 or so, when the system had crashed. So these figures are current figures that we are using presently preparing our management accounts.
Why is it impossible to have given us provisional accounts then? For example, the Permanent Secretary indicated that some of your reports were not up to standard. I want to ask the Permanent Secretary, were any of those administrative reports that were not up to standard, were they submitted as required to the cabinet of this country? All right, so you could, yeah, both.
That is before what time, you know?
No, but I'm talking about current now. Yeah, the Permanent Secretary indicated. Let me just again go back.
No,
I'm saying that if you didn't have.
She said 17 and 18 is outstanding.
Right. And if
2012 to 15, you have to have.
Right, but if it is that they are outstanding, then why are they outstanding? We are in 2019, and is it that you have given them, for example, I can ask a question. Is CPEP aware of a special examiner? Are you aware of the best practice? Are you aware of public interest directives? You know where that is coming from? Are you aware of these things? But I want to go back to the accounts first because I think this is critical as I conclude. So I will save the other maybe for another time, but I was asking why was it impossible from an accounting perspective, given explanations to the accounts, to give us provisional accounts?
Although we have these figures in front, because we couldn't close off 2015, it's open. So to say that we have the figures for current as well, but we cannot say unless that figure, that balance come forward in any accounting period, then we could actually say the subledger and the payables could match and the GL. Thank you.
Member Critchlow Kubles.
Mr. Chairman, I am aware that you have a number of CPEP contractors and workers on the priority bus route. It is my understanding that they are not provided with a priority bus route pass, so they are incurring costs of being charged for being on the bus route. What are CPEP plans to treat with that?
Remember, we have written to the Ministry of Works and Transport, and we expect that those passes should be in hand shortly.
Thank you. Well, the committee will decide after we review the requested documentation whether another hearing is necessary. But for the time being, may I just invite your closing comments and submissions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm happy to be here today, and my team will be very happy to be here. And we appreciate the questions. I think we learned a couple of things this morning too, you know. As speaking for the board, that is, we learned a couple of things this morning, which will be taken up at our next meeting. And I must apologize if the administrative reports for 17 and 18 are not here, are not submitted rather. It will be submitted. But I just want the members to bear in mind a couple of things. The people on the highways and byways, wherever they work, go through a lot of problems, you know. You see, the weather, for example, no facilities for especially the unskilled female workers, and I want you all to take into consideration. And also, the discipline we talked about, you know, if someone is not on the job, it affects the management fees. That means to say, you have to be present. The contractor will ensure that people are employed, who are employed rather, are on the job on time. And if they leave the job or if they're not present, is a reduction in the management fees. The non-compliant contractors, NIS, as we said in our outreach program, you were there, Mr. Leons, if you don't pay those NIS, the people who suffer are the ordinary workers, because when they attain the age and they're expecting NIS, when you don't pay that, they suffer. So we went out there and we tried to encourage these things. But as I said, I want to thank the members for the questions this morning. We would look out, we will consider those are very serious concerns. We will discuss it at management level and at board level and report accordingly. And thank you all very much for this session.
Yes?
Chair and members of the committee, I would like to thank you for giving us this opportunity here this morning. It was a very enlightening session, and we thank you again for giving us this opportunity to present at the inquiry. And of course, we thank you all for helping us do our jobs. It makes our life easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as you would have appreciated, the committee recognizes the important contributions of CPEP, and we very much support the idea of providing incomes to those who would not ordinarily be employable. We very much support the idea of boosting the environment and doing all that is necessary. There are many more questions I'm sure we would ask about how we could improve the organization, but today was very valuable, and we very much appreciated all your frank comments and your sharings. So thank you for your contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, it would appear that this concludes our business today, and I would like to declare the meeting suspended. In closing, may I thank CPEP, Ministry, the media, the viewing and the listening audience. Thank you.